The mistaken arrival. The stars stretched endlessly, cold and silent, as the human exploration vessel drifted beyond the edge of known space. Its mission was simple: chart new systems, record resources, and return home. Yet navigation errors often happen in the vastness of the void. A single miscalculation, a gravitational pull they did not notice, and the ship found itself swallowed by a strange corridor of light, a slipstream tunnel they had never mapped. When the vessel emerged, it was no longer near familiar stars. Instead, before them spread a vast network of colossal structures orbiting a burning blue sun, each one glowing with alien symbols. They had crossed into someone else's territory. It did not take long for the response to arrive. Alien warships, massive and curved like blades of steel, descended upon them. Energy fields locked the human vessel in place. Voices echoed through comms in a language no one recognized, yet the tone was clear. Commands, not requests. Within minutes, the human ship was surrounded and dragged deeper into the system. For the crew, fear should have been natural. They were explorers, not soldiers. Their weapons were few, their shields weak compared to the towering vessels that escorted them. Yet the humans sat in silence, steady and alert, not panicked. Their captain looked around at the crew and gave a single nod. No one spoke of surrender. No one begged. They had survived storms, hunger, wars, and isolation back on Earth. This was only another challenge. Soon, the alien ships brought them to a massive station, a citadel of light and metal that seemed to stretch like a city across the stars. The banners of the Galactic Empire shimmered over its surface. For centuries, this empire had ruled countless species. Newcomers often crawled before them, desperate for mercy or recognition. The arrival of humans, however, was not planned. Inside the citadel, alien officials gathered. Tall beings with crystalline armor, reptilian dignitaries with glowing eyes, and winged envoys whose feathers gleamed under artificial light, all came to witness the captured strangers. They expected fear. They expected trembling knees and pleading voices. Instead, when the humans were led into the hall, they walked calmly, each step firm and measured. Their clothes were plain, their bodies smaller than most species present, yet their posture carried a quiet weight. Where others would bow their heads, the humans kept their gaze forward. Whispers spread through the crowd. What are they? Their weapons must be nothing. Their skin is soft. Their world must be weak. Yet, as they watched, unease grew. There was no shaking in the humans' hands, no flicker of terror in their eyes. One alien noble leaned toward another and hissed, "They do not fear us. Do they not understand what we are?" The humans were brought before the throne of the Empire's ruling council. A towering figure cloaked in silver addressed them in a booming voice, translated into broken human speech. "You entered our empire by mistake. You are fragile, uninvited, and at our mercy. Do you understand your place?" Silence followed. Then, the human captain stepped forward. His voice was steady, simple, without arrogance, yet without submission. "We understand we crossed unknowingly, but we do not kneel. We stand as we are." A ripple of shock spread across the chamber. Countless eyes widened, mandibles clicked, wings rustled. No one spoke to the Empire that way, not the strong and certainly not the weak. For the first time in generations, the Great Hall fell silent. The humans had arrived by mistake, yet already they stood tall, unshaken. The story of their courage was only beginning. First contact, showdown. The Great Hall of the Empire had never felt so heavy. Light from giant crystal lamps poured over polished stone floors, reflecting the banners of countless conquered worlds. Every species that had bent to the Empire's will had once stood here, many broken, some trembling, all forced into silence. Yet now, in this vast chamber, The newcomers did not break. The humans stood calmly, facing the Empire's council with steady eyes, and their stillness cut deeper than any scream of defiance. The Emperor's voice rose again, sharp as metal grinding. "You are small. You are weak. You are far from your world, with no fleet, no armies, no allies. By rights, you should crawl and beg." His words echoed across the chamber, translated through hovering machines into the human tongue. "Do you choose submission or destruction?" The Empire expected the usual. They had seen species collapse at this stage, begging for survival, offering technology, offering labor, even offering their own worlds in desperate trades for mercy. The ritual was always the same. The mighty ruled, and the newcomers obeyed. But the humans broke that ritual. Their leader, a man weathered not by alien wars, but by the ordinary trials of Earth, storms, hunger, battles with time and gravity itself, did not bow. His gaze stayed level with the Emperor. His voice, steady but never raised, filled the hall. "We do not crawl. We do not beg. We stand, as all people do, on our own feet. If this is an empire built on fear, then know this: we did not come here with fear." Gasps broke across the hall. Alien nobles whispered among themselves. One reptilian envoy hissed, "Impossible! They are nothing! How can they stand against the throne?" Another, feathered and regal, tilted her head and whispered, "Perhaps they do not know death, or perhaps they know it too well." The Emperor's silver mask did not move, but his eyes narrowed. He had ruled for centuries, had crushed rebellions, had silenced defiance with fire and chains. Yet something in the humans' words pierced deeper than defiance. They were not boasting of weapons. They were not claiming power. They were simply refusing to bow. "Do you understand," the Emperor said slowly, "that in this hall, even the strongest species kneels, that even those with fleets greater than suns break under my command?" The human leader answered without hesitation. "Then perhaps it is not strength that keeps them kneeling. Perhaps it is fear. We have lived with fear. We have faced storms that tore our cities apart, oceans that swallowed our ships, skies that burned with fire. We have buried our dead and risen again. Fear is not new to us, but fear does not command us. We command ourselves." The silence that followed was different now. It was not just shock, but a dawning unease. The nobles shifted, their wings folding tighter, their claws tapping nervously against stone. They had all been raised to believe the Empire was unshakable, that the Emperor's voice was law. Yet here stood fragile beings of flesh and bone who dared to say otherwise. The Emperor leaned forward on his throne. His cloak swept across the stairs, shimmering like liquid metal. "If you will not kneel," he thundered, "then you will be tested. Perhaps your courage breaks when you see what true power is." The humans did not flinch. Not one step back, not one lowered head. That sight unsettled even the guards, tall, armored figures bred for intimidation. They had seen countless species collapse under far less pressure. But these humans, so small, so fragile, stood as if the weight of the Empire was no heavier than the winds of their home world. One noble rose, his voice carrying over the chamber. "Emperor, let them be displayed. Show them the beasts of Xiron, the storm, of Kor, the ships that burn worlds. If they survive, let the galaxy witness their strength. If they die, let their bones remind all of what defiance brings." Murmurs of approval rippled through the court. The Emperor raised his hand, silencing them. His gaze returned to the humans. "Very well. You will face trials. If you endure, you may speak again in this hall. If you fall, your species will be erased, and no one will remember you entered here." The humans exchanged glances, not with fear, but with quiet agreement. The leader gave a single nod, and together they turned back toward the Emperor. "Then test us," he said. "We did not come here to be forgotten." The council chamber, accustomed to submission, had never heard such words spoken. It would be remembered not as the day humans begged, but as the day they stood without fear. The first trial awaited them. Strength beyond weapons. The chamber doors groaned open, and the humans were escorted into a vast arena carved into the very heart of the citadel. The floor was smooth stone, marked with scars from countless trials before. High walls rose around them, lined with tiered seating where nobles, generals, and scholars gathered. The air thrummed with anticipation, the way predators lean forward before the strike. The Empire loved spectacle, and today's entertainment was rare, an untested species standing against the will of the throne. From above, banners fluttered in artificial winds. The voice of a herald boomed across the stadium. "By decree of the Emperor, the strangers shall face the trial of survival. If they endure, they may live to speak again. If they fail, their kind will be erased." The crowd answered with roars, wings snapping, claws pounding the railing. The humans stood in the center, small against the enormity of the place. They carried no weapons, only their bodies and their will. Around them, holographic screens projected their faces across the arena. The nobles leaned forward, eager to see the first cracks of fear. Yet none came. The humans stood in silence, calm, their breathing steady. A deep rumble shook the floor. At the far end of the arena, heavy gates slammed open. From the darkness emerged a creature bred for war, a beast from Xiron, its body armored in natural plates, its jaws wide enough to crush a transport vehicle. Its roar rolled through the chamber like thunder. The ground trembled beneath its weight as it advanced. The crowd erupted in delight. Many expected the humans to scatter, to scream, to plead for mercy. But the humans did none of these things. Instead, they shifted slightly, forming a loose circle, backs toward one another. Their eyes tracked the monster's movements. Their leader whispered something short, 2 words, and the humans tightened their stance. The beast charged. Dust flew into the air as its massive claws scraped the stone. The impact of its roar rattled bones, yet the humans did not flee. They moved with precision, dodging to the side, distracting it with shouts, striking at its weaker joints with nothing more than fists, improvised tools, and sharp fragments of stone broken from the arena floor. Each strike was small, almost meaningless against the creature's mass, yet they did not stop. Blow after blow they harried the beast, refusing to break formation. Where one stumbled, another pulled them back. Where one was nearly crushed, another shoved them aside. Their voices rose together, not in fear, but in rhythm, like soldiers chanting through battle. It was not strength of muscle that shook the crowd. It was the unyielding unity, the refusal to fall. The nobles watched in disbelief. "They are unarmed," one whispered. "They should be dead already." Another hissed, "No species stands against a Xiron beast without weapons. No one." Yet the humans did. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The beast grew furious, slashing wildly, its massive form slowed by exhaustion. Sweat poured from the humans, blood marked their skin, but their eyes burned with something the aliens had no word for, a fire that did not fade. Finally, one of them leapt onto the beast's back, driving a jagged shard of stone deep into the vulnerable flesh between its armored plates. The monster howled, staggered, and collapsed with a crash that shook the arena. Silence fell. The humans stood around the fallen beast, bruised and bleeding, but unbroken. They did not cheer, they did not bow, they did not ask for praise. They simply stood, breathing heavily, waiting for the next command. The Emperor himself leaned forward, his silver cloak catching the artificial light. His eyes narrowed, unreadable, but his silence was louder than the crowd's stunned whispers. The nobles shifted uneasily in their seats. Some looked fearful, others curious, a few even respectful. Finally, the herald's voice broke the silence, though it trembled. They endure. The crowd erupted, not in delight this time, but in disbelief, in confusion, in awe. For the first time in memory, the trial had not broken the newcomers. Instead, it had revealed something unsettling. A will stronger than fear, a strength not born from weapons, but from unity and resolve. One alien noble whispered to another, "If this is how they fight with nothing, what happens when they carry weapons?" Another, more shaken, muttered, "Perhaps they are not weak at all. Perhaps they are dangerous." The humans remained silent in the arena, their eyes never lowering, their backs never bending. They had been dragged here as fragile prisoners, but already the Empire was beginning to see them differently. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne. His voice carried over the stunned audience. "This is but the first trial. They will face more. Let us see if their will is stronger than death itself." The humans exchanged glances once again. Exhausted, battered, but unbroken, they gave a single nod. "Then test us," their leader said softly. "We do not fear what comes next." The arena shook not with cheers, but with the weight of a truth no one could deny. Humanity had entered by mistake, but they would not leave forgotten. The unshakable stand. The humans were given no rest. The first trial had ended with bruises, blood, and sweat, yet before their wounds could even close, the next gates opened. The Emperor wanted answers, not in words, but in proof. Was their courage simply a spark, or was it a flame that could not be extinguished? The new chamber was not an arena but a storm-world simulation, a vast dome where winds howled like wild beasts. Lightning split the sky in violent cracks, rain hammered down in torrents, and shifting platforms floated above roaring rivers of energy. It was a place designed to break the body and drown the spirit. The herald's voice rang out above the storm. "Survive the storm of Kor! No species has endured more than 1 hour. Those who fail vanish into the lightning." The storm began instantly. Winds slammed into the humans, hurling them across slick stone. Water blurred their vision, lightning struck close enough to burn the air. The nobles above leaned forward, expecting panic. They had seen species break in minutes, crying, scrambling for escape. But the humans did not scatter. They locked hands. They formed chains. Where one slipped, the others pulled. Where lightning struck, they shielded one another with their own bodies. They did not fight the storm as individuals. They endured it as one. Minutes became half an hour. The nobles whispered among themselves. How? Their skin burns, their bones must break, and still they do not release each eye. There's hands. An hour passed. Still they stood, soaked, battered, coughing, yet unyielding. The storm shrieked louder, as if angered by their refusal to fall. 2 humans lifted another who had collapsed, refusing to leave anyone behind. Their leader shouted above the thunder, his words simple. "We hold together. We endure." By the second hour, the crowd was no longer mocking. They were silent. For the first time, the storm of Kor had failed to break its victims. The humans collapsed only when the simulation shut down, falling into exhausted heaps. But not one had died. Not one had surrendered. The Emperor's eyes narrowed further. His throne of silver seemed colder as he whispered, Their endurance is not a trick. It is who they are. But he was not finished. The third trial came swiftly. The humans were dragged into a hall filled with mechanical soldiers, towering constructs of steel and fire, armed with blades that glowed like suns. They were designed to intimidate even the strongest warriors. Rows of them lined the chamber, their steps heavy, their voices metallic. The herald announced, "Face the machines! Fight or flee! None may hide." The machines advanced, weapons raised. The humans, already worn from the storm, had nothing but scraps of metal and stone. Yet once again they did not run. They darted between the machines, using speed instead of strength, coordination instead of firepower. One drew the attention of 3 machines, while another struck at exposed joints. They fought not to destroy, but to endure, to last longer than any species had before. At one point, a machine's blade swung down toward a small alien child who had wandered too close to the arena wall. Gasps filled the chamber as nobles leapt back in fear. Without hesitation, one of the humans broke formation, throwing himself between the blade and the child. The steel burned across his back, but he shielded the child until others pulled it to safety. The chamber went silent. Even the machines paused. The nobles whispered in disbelief. They protected one of ours? In the middle of trial? With their own flesh? The emperor leaned forward. For the first time, his mask of command cracked, not with anger, but with something colder, heavier, unease. They do not just endure. They protect, even when the cost is pain. The trial ended not with victory, but with silence. The machines were recalled, their glowing weapons dimming. The humans lay battered, bleeding, one barely standing after shielding the alien child. Yet they refused to bow their heads. Even in agony, their eyes remained steady, their backs unbroken. The nobles no longer laughed. They no longer called them fragile. Instead, whispers grew like wildfire. They are dangerous. They cannot be broken. They are different. The emperor rose, his cloak swirling like liquid night. His voice shook the hall. Enough. They will face one final trial. If they endure again, then the empire must decide whether to fear them or to bow to the truth they carry. The humans, breathing ragged, blood dripping onto the stone, raised their eyes to meet his. Their leader spoke, voice hoarse but steady. "Test us again. We did not come this far to kneel now." The nobles trembled, for they had seen something they had never imagined, a species that could not be broken, not by storm, not by machine, not even by death's shadow. And so, the final trial awaited, the one that would decide whether humanity was erased or remembered. The Empire remembers humanity. The final chamber was unlike any the humans had seen before. No storm raged here, no beast waited in chains, no machines stood with glowing blades. Instead, the vast hall was silent, lit only by the cold shimmer of starfire streaming through a dome of crystal above. The Emperor sat at the far end upon his throne of silver, surrounded by nobles whose faces were pale with unease. The herald's voice rang out. "The last trial is not of strength, but of spirit. The strangers must kneel before the emperor. If they kneel, they are accepted as vassals. If they refuse, they will be erased from memory and history alike." A murmur rippled through the nobles. Many leaned forward eagerly. This was the trial that had broken countless proud warriors. Even the strongest, when faced with total annihilation, bent their knees. The Empire believed submission was inevitable. The humans stood in silence. Their bodies bore the marks of every trial, bruises, cuts, burns from lightning, and the heavy limp of exhaustion. They had fought beasts, endured storms, stood against machines. Yet now they faced no physical challenge, Only one command: kneel. The Emperor's gaze was fixed upon them. His voice was heavy, sharp as a blade. Your kind has endured, but endurance means nothing without obedience. Kneel and live under my empire. Refuse and your people will vanish before they even begin. The nobles cheered. They were certain this was the end. What was courage against extinction? What was pride against the survival of one's species? Every empire thrived on that truth. Survival demands surrender. But the humans did not kneel. Their leader stepped forward, his voice steady despite the weight pressing down on him. We came here by mistake. We were dragged into your halls, your trials, your tests. We faced your beasts, your storms, your machines. We bled here, we suffered here, but we did not break. And now you ask us to kneel. He paused, his eyes meeting the Emperor's. His words echoed in the silent chamber. Understand this. We kneel to no storm, to no throne, to no empire built on fear. We stand, always. The silence that followed was deeper than any before. The nobles froze, their wings half spread, their claws suspended mid-air. Some gasped, others trembled, and no one had ever refused so directly. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne, his cloak dragged across the floor like molten silver, and his steps echoed as he approached. He towered over the humans, his eyes burning with unreadable fire. His voice, when it came, was low, dangerous. You would risk the erasure of your people for pride? The human answered without hesitation. It is not pride. It is truth. If we kneel, then we are no longer human. Better erased than broken. A murmur spread among the nobles, louder now. Some hissed that humanity must be destroyed. Others whispered in awe, they cannot be controlled. They cannot be broken. Perhaps they should not be destroyed. Perhaps they should be honored. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. He raised his hand, and silence returned. For a long moment, he said nothing. The weight of the decision pressed upon the chamber. Finally, his voice cut through the air. They entered by mistake. Yet mistake or not, they stood against everything. They bled, but did not kneel. They endured, but did not break. And they protected even a child not their own. He turned to his nobles, his cloak billowing like a storm. Tell me, what species among you has done the same? The chamber was silent. None spoke. None dared. The Emperor looked back at the humans. His expression softened, not into warmth, but into respect. You are not vassals. You are not prisoners. You are something greater. You are recognized. Gasps echoed through the hall. No species had been admitted into the Empire on equal footing in centuries. Yet here stood humanity, fragile, battered, small, and they were named as equals. The human leader bowed his head slightly, but not in submission, only in acknowledgement. We came here by mistake, but we leave standing tall. The Emperor raised his hand, and his words rang out like thunder. Let the galaxy remember this day. A humanity entered by accident, but they will not be forgotten. They stood tall without fear. The nobles, once sneering, now looked on with something new, uncertain respect, even a hint of fear. The humans turned and walked from the chamber, their steps steady despite their wounds. And across the Empire, whispers began, whispers of a fragile race that could not be broken. Whispers of a species that had stood against storms, beasts, machines, and even the throne itself. Whispers that would one day spread to every corner of the galaxy. The day humanity entered the Empire by mistake became the day the Empire learned to fear their courage.